Thank you, Ruth, for inviting me to do this topic. Really, it's a big one. I don't know what your numbers usually are for an event like this, but we did an event like this in November, actually. Same title, Alone, Not Lonely. And we had our largest number of people register. So clearly it's an issue for all of us. And whether you that are here today have experienced more feelings of loneliness in the last 2 years, if it's been a thread in your life throughout, or whether it just kind of came unexpected. We might all be in really different situations, but it's definitely a theme that we're all experiencing right now. So I'd like to share some of what I've learned about the topic, partly by speaking to others who come here to this center, reflecting on my own journey. I'm the kind of person that if I'm alone, I'm not lonely. I will tend to experience feelings of loneliness when I'm with others. So this COVID time, I have not had so many feelings of loneliness, but prior to this, I certainly have experienced it. So I think we're probably all in very different situations. And as I'm not really able to see your faces now, do feel free at any point just to pop something into the chat box as I share. And it could be questions that come or just comments. It'd be really nice. But I will share with you just some of the things that really, when investigating this whole area of loneliness, what we've really had a good case study for the last 2 years, haven't we? I read a number of things, and it correlated very much with what I was hearing here at the center, all the people that connected to the center here in Halifax. And when people were asked, why are you lonely? Or why are you experiencing feelings of loneliness? And I'm being very careful about that languaging, because I think it's one of the practical tools that will help us prevent this loneliness, is how we think about it and how we name it. But I'll start by just saying, when people were asked, well, why are you lonely? Or what's the cause of this? Why do you have feelings of loneliness? There were 7 pictures that were fairly commonly repeated. So you can check these as I share these, which one of these or which combination of these might be true for you in your situation right now. So the 7, one of the ones that certainly this has been true for all of us in COVID, is being in a completely new situation with no familiarity, no grounding, no experience with how to handle this situation. So, okay, a week or two alone or a week or two online might feel fun, but we're well into 2 years. And so at some point, the novelty wore off, and it was a completely new situation we had to adjust to, and we had to adjust to on many levels, not just the superficial, get my Zoom working properly, but many levels. So one of the pictures of loneliness is because I'm in a completely new situation, and I don't know what tools are even required to handle this situation, but I'm certainly not sure that I even have those tools. So one of them was the new situation. The other was, I'm different. So I don't know if this has happened in COVID, but this would be overall a sense of loneliness would come when you're in a gathering and you feel yourself to be different than everyone else. And I was the black sheep in my family. So as someone said to me this morning, they felt that the stork got the wrong address with their family. I would say that was my experience growing up, that there were a greater sense of loneliness being with others, but with others you don't really feel an affinity for. And so feeling different is the second one of the pictures of loneliness. The other, when people are asked, why are you lonely, is they'll say something like this: well, I don't have a sweetheart. I don't have that one special person who is mine. A very common source or cause for the feeling of loneliness, really longing for a life partner, for someone to love, and not having that, or having lost them. So that's a third reason. Another picture of loneliness is I have nothing to love. How many people, you couldn't get a dog in Canada after about 3 or 4 months of the pandemic in 2020. The SPCA, the shelter, the dog pounds, places where lost and stray dogs go, ran out of dogs. There were no more dogs to give people because everybody was looking for something to love. And if it wasn't a person, then at least having an animal. So again, these are the reasons that people give for their loneliness. And within this, of course, we can see all of the practical tips maybe to help us out. Another one that was quite common, and this is related to the feeling different, but it's more that you can be surrounded by people who are friendly. I know this from my daughter's generation, lots of groups of people, social situations where you have lots of associates, lots of friendly people you associate with, but not necessarily friends. And I think this became very poignant in the last couple of years, that I may have had groups of people I knew, but the ones who were real friends, you realize that there were just very few of them. And so that's one of the other reasons. Another one asked why lonely people discovered that they thought they could rely on their friends, but either the friends had their own issues to deal with, or things do happen in our world that what I believe to be a loyal group or set of friends turned out to be lacking in loyalty. And it may have been my poor discernment, but the feeling of not having trustworthy friends. Another one, which is very common, is people feeling there isn't a presence just of any other human being. And I showed these two on separate benches because it's almost like that. You could be living in the same space and not really share many activities, maybe not even sharing a meal. How many have older children that come and go, and the meal doesn't happen sitting together very often? And yet just the presence of another human being is actually creates feelings of not being alone. So the absence of just a presence, a human presence in the space. So those were the 7 pictures of loneliness. When asked, why are you lonely? This is what people tended to say. And of course, you're here at the Brahma Kumari's inner space in Manchester because there is a spiritual angle on this. And I noticed somebody put in the chat box, well, you have yourself. And yes, we do. Of course, that's what we learn when we study with the Brahma Kumaris, and we discover ourselves as incredibly good company. And we discover, God as a good companion in life. But before then, we may still be lost in feelings of loneliness. And even after becoming a meditator, many people in this last couple of years have had unexpected feelings of loneliness where they did not feel lonely at all, and suddenly this came up. So it can come up at any time. So, but it is helpful, and it has been helpful for me over the years to discern the difference between loneliness and solitude. And as I said at the beginning, I'm very happy in my own company. I love solitude. Very different than loneliness. So you can be alone and not be lonely, which is the title of today's talk. But of course, you can be with others and feel very lonely. So what's the difference? And I think loneliness is really feelings of being isolated. It's really about isolation, feeling isolated, because we can feel connected to people who are on the other end of a Zoom or across the world and have lots of that feeling of connection and not feel lonely. But the feeling isolated, and this again, regardless of circumstance. So even when I'm surrounded by kind, lovely people, if I don't feel a connection, if I feel isolated, I will have those feelings of loneliness. So the feeling of isolation, feeling isolated, regardless of my circumstance. So even in all those previous 7 pictures of loneliness, I might have a pet, really sweet, lovely pet, and still feel lonely, right? Feel isolated. So none of those things are antidotes. If I were to fulfill every one of those, I might get a sweetheart and find myself lonelier than I was before if it doesn't work out, if it's not a true, connection, if there isn't a relationship of respect and appreciation. So the loneliness is the feeling isolated, no matter what your circumstances. Whereas, and it was actually, I have a couple of children. They're long since grown up, and I've lived alone for some time. But I remember asking one of the daughters at the start of COVID if she felt lonely. And she did not feel lonely, actually, which was good for a mother to hear. She did not feel lonely. And I asked her to define, so what's loneliness? What do you think loneliness is? I loved her answer. She said, I'm not good enough. It's when I'm not good enough company for myself, Mom. So loneliness is I'm not good enough company for myself. In other words, I feel a lack of something. So, of course, the secret as a meditator is as we begin to discover what's inside ourselves, we discover what a rich and wonderful resource is inside of me, and therefore what good company I can be even when I'm physically alone. So also the trick to be good company for myself when I'm in a gathering and feel lonely. So again, befriending myself in a way that I am good company for myself. So one definition of loneliness is that I'm not good enough company for myself. Very interesting angle. And I think this definition that she gave me when I asked her actually leads us into a spiritual exploration of this topic. And I think transforming loneliness into solitude is what has been my experience on this journey. And let's define solitude, for maybe others would have other definitions of solitude, and I'd be very happy to hear them or read them in the chat box. But this is one definition of solitude that made sense to me: making the choice to enjoy my own company. So, when we go on meditation retreats, we make the choice to go into silence or to spend the afternoon with a set of good reflection questions and maybe a meditation commentary, or, to walk in silent reflection. But all of this solitude is actually, it's an inner choice that I'm making to enjoy my own company. And I would add to that, as a meditator, to enjoy God's company. But first, to start by being happy to be in my own company and making the choice to be in my own company and enjoy my own company is solitude. And this, of course, can be a very rich and beautiful experience. So then I'm alone, but I am certainly not lonely. And even if I am with others, I can be in solitude in my mind. I can be in solitude inside myself and not be lonely. It's about being good company for myself. So I wanted to just present that because that's really coming from worldly research and studies and sociological view on the situation, and now verging a little bit into the spiritual. So transitioning into, I guess, embracing solitude as a means to transform loneliness. So I don't feel isolated in any situation at any time, whether I'm with loved ones or not, whether I like the people I'm with or not, whether I have a dog or not. I am always able to feel good company for myself, to connect to myself so I don't feel isolated, and to connect to God. So of course, as a meditator, that would be our approach to transform loneliness into solitude. And solitude is a rich and enjoyable thing, at least from my experience. And I think by definition, it's very different than isolated or lonely, the word itself, solitude. And I don't know the etymological roots. I don't know the root of the word, but I see the word sol, soul. So being, I suspect it's got something to do with, soul awareness, or being with the soul, being with the self. So I'd like to explore, and some of these are very practical. And again, they're going to come from some of the worldly methods and studies and research that is out there, because, we have a lot of research right now into loneliness. And certainly the pandemic has, created an industry of studying loneliness. And there's another term, and I don't know if any of you have heard it, but there's another term that runs parallel to the research that's been done on loneliness in the last couple of years. And that term is languishing. And it's not a word that I would use much, or I would think it's more of, lying on the couch and being content to just be a couch potato. But actually, when I think of how the word languish might be used in English, I think I would associate it more with they languished in prison, or they languished in their jail. So there's something about being in an in-between state where you're neither living, but you're not dead. You're in this kind of in-between state. And that's how they're defining the term languishing in the last couple of years, referring to a state of mind, a state of consciousness where you're surviving, as we have been doing, all of us who are here on this call, we've all been surviving, but being in a state where you're not actually thriving. And they're defining that in-between state as languishing, which very interesting. Lots of studies and articles have been written about languishing in the last couple of years, but running parallel to that is a lot of research into loneliness. And what I find interesting about it is that these tips that I will present now, these tips about preventing loneliness, preventing the experience or feelings of loneliness, although they come from social science, they are like beautiful doors into some of the spiritual principles that we learn here at the Brahma Kumaris. So I'll give you both. I'll give you, here's what social science says is a useful way to prevent loneliness, but also what's the spiritual principle behind that. So the first one, and I find this one just absolutely lovely, and it fits with our spiritual understanding, is the first thing to do is to give. And it seems a paradox, of course, because if I'm lonely, What I want is someone else to give to me. I want someone to show up and say, hey, do you want to have a Zoom call? Or, hey, would you like to go for a walk? Or something we could do safely in COVID, go for an outdoor cup of coffee in a park. Or, I'm kind of quietly sitting here waiting for someone else to give to me. And that's the sense of not being a good enough company for myself, is that there's some deficit there and I'm wanting to fill it. And of course, that's what gets us into this pickle in the first place, is that I have become dependent on externals to make me feel full, to make me feel that I've got that stimulus or company, entertainment value or fulfillment. So the first thing, and this is social science everywhere, is that the first thing you should do is give. And if you just think about how we feel when we give, it's very fulfilling to give. And of course, we're probably the first to benefit when we do give. And it can be the smallest thing, to reach out and send a nice note to someone. That's giving. But of course, we could, how many people we could give with our minds, but how many people have needed help in this COVID time? Social science, all the readings and the teachings would say, get out there and do some community service, get out there and love your neighbor. I have this really lovely set of neighbors who just moved in next to the meditation center where I live, and they're a family of 10. We don't have families of 10 very much anymore in Canada, but they're a blended family and they've adopted a bunch of children. So there's 8 children in this family. It's remarkable. And we've had a lot of snow recently in Canada. And the last time we had a dump, we call it a dump, of 40 centimeters of snow, which is a lot. And it's hard to shovel, especially when it's thick and heavy. And I had said to them, and I love to shovel, so I'm fine with it, but it does take a lot of time. And it's certainly a good workout for the body. But they bought a snow blower, and but they have teenagers. And I had approached, I just, out in the street, I'd said to them at one point, if you've got teenagers and you want to get them to work, I'd be really happy to engage them, in shoveling snow, and happy to give them some pocket money that would help them out. And they looked at me like I had said something almost insulting. It was very touching. They said, we're not that kind of people. And what they meant was, we would never accept money to help you shovel your driveway. I was so touched. And since then, we've had 2 of those big dumps, as we call them. And I'm out pretty early in the morning. I'm out at 4:45, 5 o'clock to shovel before people come for our morning class. I have to be out there early. And on both occasions, I can't believe it, I go out there and they've already done it with their new snowblower. And, they're just the happiest people. And I look at them and I think, you're just giving all the time. And they're very happy. So they didn't sign up for community service. For them, it was just in their blood and they did it. And any of you, and I'm sure all of you, have been helping friends, neighbors, others, but also helping in our community organizations in whatever way we can. And I know at the meditation center, the first thing we did at the start of COVID, like Manchester, we all went online and we found the ways to keep offering. And, we did, we got people in our local community to offer their wisdom online. And we started with hatha yoga. We've got some lovely hatha yoga instructors. We started offering through the BK Center hips, we called them hipster programs, because everyone was sitting so much in COVID, because March in Canada is not a time you get out very easily. And so the hips were all seizing up. Everybody's hips were seizing up. So we did hipster programs. We had a Pilates instructor, and we had, anyways, just an example of how we all modify, we all find ways to give. But the point is, it helps me feel connected. I don't feel isolated when I give. So therefore, there are fewer feelings of loneliness. So that was tip number 1. Practice number 1 for preventing feelings of loneliness. I'm sure you can all relate to this. very simple. Oh, and giving your time and giving donations. That might be a euro. I'm not sure. You could tell by the currency down there, but also giving to places that are doing work and giving your time. How many hours have any of us spent online with friends, just hearing them out, just listening through the ups and downs of their experience of COVID? I'm sure many of you have. So giving, number one. Number two, and this fits very nice for us meditators who are monitoring our self-talk. Yes, we get to look at ourselves a lot these days. I found very quickly, it took me a year, but I found very quickly how to hide self-view on Zoom. So I never had to look at myself anymore, because I spent that first year looking at myself. But I don't anymore. But we certainly have enough opportunity alone, I have, to be able to self-monitor, check what's going on in our minds. And, it's part of the introductory course to meditation with the Brahma Kumaris that we check our thoughts. We check what kinds of thoughts are we having, and we redirect if we're having negative thoughts or waste thoughts or unpleasant thoughts. And so this habit is really, really important, especially when I'm facing feelings of loneliness, because I can track, I can see what was the thought that came before the feeling of loneliness. And I've written here in this little person's little journal, I've written here, I am having feelings of loneliness is a key self-talk phrase rather than I am lonely. Because I am a peaceful soul. I am a powerful soul. I'm a loving soul. I'm a happy soul. But I am having feelings of loneliness. It's just like looking in the mirror and saying, I am fat versus, or I am old versus my body's getting old or my body's getting fat. Very subtle distinction, but very powerful to not own it, to not make that a self-defining feature. So when I self-monitor to look, oh, I'm having feelings of loneliness. Now, I may have had these feelings for so long that they sort of amassed into a state of mind, a state of being that just seems fixed for me. But that doesn't mean that it is fixed. It just means I've been having these feelings for a long time, or in a very intense way. So one of the most important things as we self-monitor is to make this distinction between I am lonely and I am having feelings of loneliness, but to watch in my thought catalog, my journals, my daily reflection. We just had a moment here. My music goes off every hour, as I'm sure many of you have. We call it traffic control. And it's a wonderful every hour practice of stopping and checking. What's the feeling I'm having? What are the thoughts I'm having? And especially to notice what thoughts led me to the feeling of loneliness. And if it was a feeling of, oh, my neighbors are having so much fun and I'm not. Oh, my sister has an extended family and they all live together and see each other in the same bubble and I live alone, or whatever. All these thoughts create the feeling. So I can go back and check and unpack them. Is that really true? And, I know how many troubles she's having with her family. Is that really true? Check these things. And then, of course, to redirect myself. So the simplest and the most powerful tool for all of us is just to stop, observe what kind of feelings I'm having, and then steer to something else. The thing is, we have to invest in that something else. What is that something else going to be? I have to have a positive go-to. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. But I think many of you who've been with the Brahma Kumaris before will know that that is either a beautiful experience I've had, um, an experience of myself. I am a peaceful soul, and remembering those peaceful moments I've had with myself. I'm content. And we'll see soon, there's also some grateful practices that could fit very nicely in the steer to the positive. So self-monitoring was the second practice. The third practice that social science offers us, but also within our meditation world, is an attitude of gratitude. And, this has had currency, this gratitude journaling, the attitude of gratitude has been with us, I think, for at least a decade, probably 10 years, maybe more, that this thought that we could practice gratitude and as a way to develop an appreciative attitude towards life. So we know with depression, it's like a brain eclipse. Because we're not producing enough serotonin in the brain, it eclipses the capacity to remember the good bits, the happy moments, the happy feelings. And so this eclipsing in those moments where I'm experiencing feelings of loneliness, or when my own brain is eclipsing in some way, I completely forget all the good things in my life. I completely fixate on that negative feeling, be it of loneliness or sadness or whatever. And so you have to do the gratitude practice prior to the bad feeling time so that it's there when you're having a bad feeling and you can redirect. But it's really interesting to develop this practice so that in the moment it becomes quite it's present for me, it's available for me, so that it's a practice of accepting life and appreciating it and accepting others. So in the moment I look at myself and I'm able to say, but I'm really, really grateful that I have this roof, that I have this body in relative good health, that I have, so even just redirecting myself to look at some of these things I am grateful for actually uplifts me. So, and this is, somebody's asked the question, I can see it in the chat box. Diverting our thoughts by steering them to the positive is not actually bypassing. Thinking about the thoughts will indulge them. Thinking about the thoughts might analyze them. Now, a quick look at why am I having that thought? What's that thought really about is actually data. That's useful. But anything beyond that becomes indulging in it, thinking that I really have to get into it and feel it. And that for us, at least with the Brahma Kumari practice, is our understanding is that, yes, I see it's there. I'm not in denial. I'm not suppressing. I'm not repressing it. I see that feeling is there. And I'm able to stand here and notice that feeling. And as I stand here in a different sense of self, myself as a being of light, a soul, then I am able to bring the lightness, bring the power, bring the beauty of the soul to the inner world, so that that feeling of loneliness dissipates, right? It dissolves. So that's very different than bypassing. But thank you for asking that. And it fits with the last practice. So that's why I was answering it now. And I hope that helps. If not, then please ask again. But so this attitude of gratitude just develops an appreciative mindset. And I know many people who instantly, if something goes wrong, now it can feel a bit like Pollyanna. Oh, well, but there's this silver lining. And I think, oh, but I'm really not happy with this. When and how you voice that is another thing. But the inner practice of going, okay, there must be some benefit here. I'm going to look for that benefit. It might not be obvious to me in this moment. So in the meantime, I'm going to be grateful for what I do have. So this is a practice that people do and that we can do every day. And it can be as simple as the 3 things you are grateful for. I'm going to invite you to do that now with me, if you would, is just to stop and take a moment and think about your life, your situation that you're in right now. And what are 3 things you're grateful for? And if you have a practice of doing this regularly, I will challenge you to find 3 new things, or to find 3 things that are much more subtle than the obvious. I have a roof over my head, I have food to eat, etc. But if it's your first time doing this, any 3 things are fine. So let's just take a moment of silence and sit together. And I'd like you each just to think of 3 things you are grateful for. So just check how you feel inside. And taking our definition of loneliness as a sense of isolation, feeling isolated. The moment you think about what you're grateful for, you actually feel connected to goodness. You feel connected to appreciation. You feel connected to an energy that's uplifting. And then what happens is it dissipates the feeling of loneliness. So that was one of the key practices to prevent feelings of loneliness. And I'll just let you ask the questions in the chat box at any point. We'll take them up later. The next one, which I find quite interesting, and again, this is social science, but it's definitely for us, the spiritual effort makers out there, is to expect the best. Check your attitude. So we know here that attitude determines my altitude, how high up I am seeing the situation. An attitude of battle, life's a struggle. I'm certainly going to be on the level of the battlefield itself. An attitude of, oh, let's look down at what's happening, and with a benevolent view, it lifts me a little bit. But also my attitude will very much determine how I respond, and it will determine my feelings. So this is interesting, to expect the best. I know many Eeyores. I know many people who don't expect the best. In fact, I'm an incredibly, generally speaking, cheerful person. But I know that the first thought I have in my mind when I wake up in the morning is not a cheerful thought. It is not optimistic. So I've had to train myself to immediately transform whatever that feeling is, the oh God, another day kind of feeling, to change that feeling into what I appreciate about the day, come back to, oh, thank you, God. Oh, God, it's you. You're there. Happy day. So expecting the best is maybe not innate to all of us, but it is definitely something we can develop as a practice. So, and this is why I think it's really important to check the attitude, because one of the greatest things when we are feeling lonely, we expect to be rejected. We expect things not to go our way. We expect things to continue to isolate me. We expect more obstacles and barriers to all the good things that will make me feel better. And so what's very interesting, if I expect the best, then what happens is I begin to notice the ways in which I armor up when I feel vulnerable. So one of the first things we do when we have feelings of loneliness is maybe we go into depression or sadness, but for many, we kind of armor up and we get a bit defensive. And, the best defense is a good offense. So we get a bit prickly. So just to look at the self and reflect on what patterns, what habits do I have of armoring up when I feel vulnerable? And in particular, how do these habits, how does this armoring up actually isolate me from myself? Because if I was really connecting to myself, I would accept the fact that I feel very vulnerable in this moment. There would be an automatic response of compassion for myself. Not a, you're a failure, you better get it together, get out there, find a way to be useful, or whatever the self-talk is. If I was not armoring up, I would not be isolating myself from myself, which is the first and greatest isolation. To isolate myself from what I'm really feeling, not to indulge it, but to see it with detached and loving eyes. I'm feeling really vulnerable right now. And there's nothing I would want to do but give myself a great big hug. And whatever the form of that hug takes, if it's a sweet little time alone, if it's a whatever I do to make myself feel better, I do that. But it's a healthy feeling better. All of the bad habits for feeling better, the comfort eating, the escapism into Netflix, etc., all of those habits are there because I cannot face the feelings of vulnerability. Okay, maybe we do them just for some entertainment. That's fine. But very often it's because I feel quite isolated from myself. So that's the next practice, is just to reflect on the ways in which I armor up. And I could take this opportunity. Loneliness is therefore just a signal. It's like an alarm bell saying, okay, you're armoring up. Stop, look at what you're doing. And instead of isolating from self, compassion for self. And of course, I've got two more here before the questions, open for questions, because I see there are a number of questions. So we'll save the time for those. The fifth one was learning to develop quality relationships. Now, this is a lifelong learning for all of us. Many of us have been in relationships that aren't very healthy. And some of those we were born into with our families. And, they're so habitual that they're hard to change, but we are learning and we are developing. But the most important relationship is the quality of relationship with myself. So am I learning to develop a quality relationship with myself? And we can go many other places. We can get into social and self-help and personal development groups to be looking at developing quality relationships with others. But here in the Brahma Kumaris, we tend to understand that all of my relationships with others will reflect the quality of relationship with myself. And therefore, anything that isn't going well in a relationship with someone else will be a wonderful mirror for me to figure out, okay, what are the feelings I'm having in that relationship, and how do I heal those feelings so that I feel good about myself in those relationships? So loving yourself and developing quality of relationship with yourself means to love all of my own qualities, to spend time like I would with a gratitude journal, to spend time identifying and appreciating my own inner qualities. So as a companion practice to the gratitude journal, what are you grateful for? One of the things that I was grateful for was that I get to be in this session. I feel a wonderful fortune. But one of the other things on my gratitude list was a self-appreciation that I actually want to be in a session like this. I want to take the time to think about these things and to share them. And isn't that amazing that I want to? Not everybody I know wants to. So in a way, that was a self-appreciation. So I'm going to invite you now, before we move into questions, to just stop, and whether you write it down or whether you just identify it quietly in your head, but the basis of a high quality relationship with yourself is to identify positive qualities for yourself. So my practice is the gratitude, but I add to that every day and what I experienced in myself today. What virtues or positive qualities did I express today or experience in myself? So I'll invite you just for a moment of silence to identify positive qualities you are experiencing in yourself today. Let's be very specific today. And hopefully you're finding them. And hopefully as you find them, you have that feeling of positive energy emerge inside. It's a beautiful feeling. And actually, it's that energy which is good company. That's the good company energy, having those feelings towards yourself. So, and the last one, to meditate. And of course, what are we doing when we meditate? And I'm going to invite us in to do that just for a minute. Or Ruth, I can do that at the end after the questions, whatever makes most sense in your flow. I'm happy to save 2-3 minutes at the end if you'd like. But the last practice that is being recommended everywhere is that we meditate. And by that, very simply, that I pull away from all the noise of the world. And then I pull inside, even beneath the noise of my own mind, to the very quiet, still place within. And in that still place, I find good company. I find myself. So I think I'd like to end with that, if I can, Ruth. And just, I've brought you everyone a blessing today. So I'm going to save that for the end, a little blessing to give to everybody. But we'll do that after a little meditation. So I'm going to stop sharing screen now, and I'm going to look at some of the, and Ruth, maybe you can read aloud to me. I know some came into me directly, but a couple have come from you, Ruth. So would you read a couple to me?
Yes, certainly. Yes, I thought maybe you might like to look at them as you go along, but happy to read them.
I can't hear you, and it might be my microphone.
Can you hear?
Now I can hear you. Thanks, Ruth.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So one question that came was related to relationships with others, and how can I trust another when I've been disappointed? There was a question about how often we should practice gratitude, every day, and at what time, in the morning or before bed. And a third one about your religious background. And this person is contemplating joining a Buddhist temple in an attempt to reduce feelings of loneliness and reconnect with his or her spiritual self. Is this something you recommend or think would be worthwhile? So 3 different questions.
Those are lovely. Thank you. I think I have to start from the last one because it's the only one I remember, working backwards. You know, I studied Buddhism for several years here. Halifax is the international headquarters of Shambhala Buddhism. And that was the big meditation group in town. And so I spent some years meditating there. A very different approach to meditation, which was less satisfying for me, but very satisfying for many, because I wasn't happy trying to empty my mind. And I found I was quite a failure at it, actually. I could never empty my mind. So the Brahma Kumari's meditation worked much better for me, that I could actually take a thought and get absorbed in it and fill my mind with good energy. And I found it quite tedious just to watch my thoughts, which is what we were doing here at the Buddhist Center here. So, it's everyone, it's their own. Whatever your path is, you will find it. I do know that my Buddhist friends, look at me and say, well, you look pretty full. Well, we're all trying to be empty. And so I know it shines forth the fullness that we discover in the BK world, in the BK practice of Raj Yoga, that we discover the soul and the light of the soul and the beauty of the soul and the qualities of the soul, or the being, as my Buddhist friends would say. And so I don't know, and it would very much depend on the Buddhist temple you're speaking of. They tend to have vows of silence. They tend to do that and chanting. So why don't you just trundle on down to your Brahma Kumari's meditation? They're really lovely. I understand joining a social group or joining a group that is also spiritually minded, very helpful. So yes, and I wish you the very best with that. I think I remember the other question about how often with gratitude. It's up to you. I think it's throughout the day practice. If I find myself getting a little Eeyore-ish, if I find myself having a grumpy thought, I do a quick, what can I appreciate about the situation? What am I grateful for? It's probably not as, what am I grateful for is probably not the question I ask myself. It's just a more subtle practice of looking for the positive, looking to be appreciative, changing my attitude. So I think we do that throughout the day, but I definitely do it before I go to bed. It's my last practice before I go to bed, is I look back at my day. I let go of anything I don't want to take to sleep to bed with me, let go of any mistake I've made, and I learn from it. I look at myself and what qualities I feel good about, so there's a good little self-hug to end the day, and an appreciation of my world and the drama, my life, which is the gratitude piece. And then I say goodnight to God. I just have a little love hug with God before I sleep. So I think end of day is a very good thing. And as I shared with you, although I may appear a very cheerful person, and I am, I also do that every morning. So I think it's great to bookend your day with a gratitude practice and then throughout the day. And the other one, you might have to remind me, Ruth, was around relationships with other. How can you trust that if they've not been trustworthy before? Was that it?
How can I trust another when I've been disappointed?
Oh, gosh. That hurts, doesn't it? Yeah, it hurts, and it makes us very vulnerable and less willing to trust again. So I think you just have to take care of yourself. I think you have to forgive yourself for trusting someone who maybe wasn't trustworthy. I know I have done that in the past, and I've had to forgive myself for being undiscerning, because my need for love was so great that I was willing to let somebody in who didn't really meet the bar of trustworthiness. So I think there's a lot of self care that's required after that before you can trust again. And we have to be discerning. And I know in the Raj Yoga, I don't feel like trust for others is so much an issue for me. I feel like it's trusting myself, that I know I can get through anything. And trusting that whoever's with me has something beautiful to offer, and I can learn from them. Maybe I'm less dependent on others since I started meditating, so it becomes less of an issue to me if they're trustworthy, because I'm not depending on them. So I don't know if that answers your question, but I hope that gives you something.
And one more that's just come in, Judy, this is the last one I can see at the moment. Is loneliness connected to or linked to low self-esteem?
Wonderful, wonderful question. I bet it is. Yes, I think it must be. When I think of being good company for oneself, I guess I kind of have to like myself, and maybe not Judy, but like the soul that I am inside, that me who's ever so lovely, and when I'm at my best, and soul consciousness is really about that best part of me that has never been squelched by life, you know? And so, yeah, when I'm connected to that, which is truly me, the soul, I actually have a great deal of self-respect. So I think low self-esteem would very much be connected to feeling isolated from that best part of me, and therefore then easily isolated and from others. Yeah, lovely question. Thank you for asking.
One more that's just come in. Is this a religious group?
The Brahma Kumaris, for me, no. You might ask another Brahma Kumari and get a different answer. For me, I'm a student of this university, which is a spiritual university. So most of us here, I think, would agree with that, that we study these spiritual principles. What is it that influences the human spirit? What affects it? And what is the very nature of the human spirit, so that we can empower that in the world? A direct connection with a divine source. So in that sense, we might feel religious in that we refer to God. We're pretty happy lovers of God here, but not in the religious way that I experienced when I was a Christian, and then not in the absent God way that I experienced in Buddhism, which is also a religion. So it's more of a spiritual practice, connecting to my inner self, that beautiful, pure part of me, and then connecting to a pure energy that can help me be my best. So I would say no, not a religion, but a spiritual practice. And you can be quite discerning. There are parts that might look a little religious, but when you understand what's behind it, you know, for me, it always comes out as spiritual practice. So I hope that answers your question.
Thank you so much, Judy. No more questions?
Okay,
so we can carry on with what you were going to share next.
I'd like just to do a moment of, a brief moment of meditation, and then give you each a beautiful blessing to go. And I will share the PowerPoint. I think this is being recorded, but happy to share the PowerPoint with Ruth if that's useful to anybody. So why don't we just take just one moment in meditation. Many have been asking about what is this anyway. So just if you can close your eyes, because it'll allow you to be in solitude, in your own company for a moment, and just take a deep breath in. Let it out through your mouth, in through the nose, out through the mouth slowly. That just gets energy flowing through your body and grounds you. I'd like you to pay attention to see if you can hear your own heartbeat. Fantastic for concentrating our energy internally, isn't it? And then just come up, visualize a thread of light from your heart up to your forehead, behind the eyes, in the brain. And just imagine, I guess it could be a room in your head. We often do that. But just visualize that this is the seat of the soul, actually. This is where the being, the living being of energy resides in the human body. Just come into that quiet, concentrated awareness of the thinking being, the one who's thinking right now, the one who's listening to me through the ears, but making sense of what I'm saying and following what I'm saying. That's you, the being, the soul. And just imagine that this inner space, being with this lovely energy of self, is actually incredibly good company. In this space with self, you'll never be loneliness. In this space with self, you're connected to loving, pure energy. And if you wish, from this inner space, you can visualize a beautiful, pure white light coming into the top of your head from above and beyond this world and into your mind and filling your mind with light. This loving, pure energy of light is washing over your body and over your mind, and cooling and soothing and warming and caressing and loving you. To be in this light, to be with yourself in this light, is good company. So you'll never, never be lonely. And if you would like to choose one of these beautiful hearts with a sparkling light in the middle, as you open your eyes and just look at one of those and pick one that draws your attention right now and stick with it, because I'm going to reveal in the place where that one is a beautiful kind of good wish. Actually, it's going to be an affirmation for you, sort of spotlighting some quality of yourself that is actually really useful for you to experience yourself as good company. So here we go. If you've picked your heart, you can take a screenshot of it if you'd like, take a picture of it. Just take a moment and read to yourself this quality of you. Own it, claim it, take it with you as you leave this session. Take it into your space of solitude internally so that you can be good company for yourself. Om Shanti.
A big thank you. A moment just to read those blessings. While you're taking your screenshot or whatever, contact details in the chat. Contact details in the chat. For some reason I keep muting. Contact details are in the chat. So, may I thank you now, Judy, for a very rich sharing. And I took a lot of points. I made copious notes, which I will revisit. And I'll also watch the recording myself because I wasn't taking things in fully. I would like to welcome people to our upcoming programs. And we have a slide to share with those, where we're looking at the next talk coming up next week with Enrico Simo of Spain. And it's a beautiful talk, Expressions of Love, looking at the ways we share our love, the languages of love. And this can help me, perhaps, develop more love for myself. We have our regular seminars, our self-development seminars. And I think there's a slide for those coming up. So lunchtime meditations, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, online, and they will stay online, 12:30 to 12:50. And we will, next month, open up for in-person quiet room and meditations. Raj Yoga meditation, our 4-part introduction, starts next week. Tuesday, Thursday next week, Tuesday, Thursday of the following week. And as always, we welcome people who've done the course before to come back, revisit, explore yourself, because you're different. Each day makes us different, especially if we're practicing gratitude, self-reflection, meditation. So as well as that, understanding anger, think more positively, managing my emotions, and understanding anger will be coming up. Have I covered all 4? No, relax more, stress less. So lots of opportunities to explore and appreciate the self and find company in the feelings of love and appreciation for the self. Thank you so much, Judy. Thank you for joining. And we look forward to welcoming you back at the next opportunity. Hopefully, Judy will visit in person when she comes to visit her daughter in London. We do hope so. You have to let us know. But thank you all for joining. And I'm not sure what's happened to the other slides, but we don't need them. Take care, stay safe, and good night. So these are the images for our different self-development programs, our seminars, 1-hour seminars and lunchtime meditations. Look on our website. In the chat, there was the link. If you want to contact us by email, the email is there. Take care. Good night.